bear in mind that the law that we passed and you passed requires that a whistleblower complaint that is designated to go to Congress must go to Congress, must go to the intelligence committees. That if the Inspector General finds it credible and urgent, it has to not only go to Congress, it has to go to Congress soon. There's a timetable. And bear in mind what happened when that complaint was filed and the Inspector General says it's not only credible, it's urgent. It's urgent. What happens? Well, it goes to the Acting Director of National Intelligence. And what does he do? He contacts the White House. And he contacts Bill Barr's Justice Department. And what does Bill Barr's Justice Department do in consultation with the White House? They say, don't turn it over to Congress. You don't have to turn it over to Congress. I know what the law says. It says you shall. Doesn't say you may. Doesn't say you might. Doesn't say you can if you like to. Doesn't say if the president doesn't object. It says you shall. And we're telling you, Bill Barr's Justice Department is telling you, you don't have to. Highest office of the law in the land is saying, ignore the law. Ignore the law. We'll come up with some rationalization. We'll get our guys at the Office of Legal Counsel to write some opinion. We'll find a way. Do not turn it over. You don't have to. And they don't. And they don't. And the Inspector General, who deserves a lot of credit for guts, he reports to the intelligence committees and says they're violating the law. And I don't know what to do about it. They're supposed to turn it over to you. I don't know what to do about it. But I need to tell you, to meet my obligation, they're not doing what they should. And so we subpoena the Director of National Intelligence. And we make it clear to the National Intelligence Director of National Intelligence, he's going to have to come before Congress in an open hearing and explain why he's the first acting director to refuse to turn a complaint over to Congress. And the investigations are opened. And the result is they're forced to turn it over to Congress, and they're forced to release this call record. But here you have the Department of Justice weighing in, you don't have to turn it over. The same call record that mentions the Attorney General of the United States. But it fails. That effort to cover up, to conceal the whistleblower complaint fails. And it comes out. And no sooner than it does, the Attorney General says, we had nothing to do with this. Now, of course, if that had never been released, well, then the Attorney General's name would have never come up in this call record, and there would be no necessity of distancing himself from the President's actions. Now, in the next exchange, President Zelensky says that he's going to have a new prosecutor general, and he or she will look into the situation specifically to the company that you mentioned in this issue. Now, this is also interesting. The company that you mentioned in this issue. Now, there's no company mentioned in this issue in the call record. But, of course, you've seen now testimony from two witnesses who were on that call that Burisma was mentioned. So why isn't Burisma in the call record? Well, can't say this. That call record went to that highly classified server. And that mention of Burisma didn't make it into the call record. But Zelensky goes on to say the issue of the investigation of the case is actually the issue of making sure to restore the honesty, so we will take care of that. And we will work on the investigation of the case. Time after time after time, Zelensky feels the need to assure the president he's going to do those political investigations that the president wants. In the next exchange, the president, after Zelensky says this, the president says, I will have Mr. Giuliani give you a call, and I'm also going to have Attorney General Barr call, and we will get to the bottom of it. I think, I mean, you can count, don't take my word, but I think there's no one who comes up more in this call record than Rudy Giuliani, which tells us something. Now, in the next exchange, Zelensky says, among other things, I also wanted to thank you for your invitation to visit the United States, specifically Washington, D.C. On the other hand, I also want to ensure you that we will be very serious about the case and we will work on the investigation. So here, in the same way that earlier in the conversation, Zelensky brings up those weapons, those javelins he needs, and the president immediately says, I have a favor. So military assistance, I have a favor. Here Zelensky says, I want to thank you for your invitation to come visit. I also want to assure you we're serious about doing the investigation. Clearly, he is linking the two, and of course, he's linking the two because he's told the two are linked before the call. And he's conveying to the president, I got the message. Now, the president, in the next exchange, says, I will tell Rudy and Attorney General Barr to call. Again, let's make sure there's no misunderstanding here. I'm going to have them call. I want you in touch with Rudy Giuliani and the Attorney General. I will tell Rudy and the Attorney General Barr to call. Thank you. Whenever you would like to come to the White House, feel free to call. I'm going to have you talk to Rudy and the Attorney General, and by the way, anytime you want to come to the White House, just call. Give us a date and we'll work that out. I look forward to seeing you. And then Zelensky says, thank you very much. I would be very happy to come. I'm looking forward to our meeting. Again and again, Zelensky's ask, what he goes into that call wanting is the meeting. You could tell what he was prepared for. He was prepared for the request for investigations. He knew what he had to promise, and he knew what he wanted to obtain, and that was the visit. Now, you also saw in that video, that rather sad video, yes, sort of humorous but sad too, of Zelensky and President Trump at the UN, where he's saying, I still haven't gotten that meeting. And I can tell you something, and this is what is so frightening about these circumstances. If we hadn't discovered all this, he would likely be saying at that UN meeting, we're still waiting on that military aid. Yeah, we forced the aid to be released because the president got caught. But even now, our ally can't get his foot in the door. Even now, our ally can't get his foot in the door. And this brings me to the last